Okay, we are building a digital magic, a magic digital AI familiar. This is for the Create Your Own Assignment Week 10 in the CS50 C programming class. So what does this thing do? You can think of it as a ritual guide plus a journal plus a tiny learning brain. It can help you practice. It can listen to your intent. It offers some spiritual insight. It can give you an energy reading, and it can learn from your responses. It can get better. It grows stronger the more you use it. Similar to a little magical AI apprentice. When you're talking about AI and computer and technology, and pretty much most of the tools that you're using in today's world, your cell phone, your cars, even your refrigerators, your coffee makers, it all uses computer technology to one degree or another, and all that boils down to zeros and ones. That's it, just zeros and ones. All of the complex computation and decision making behind when you turn on your MP3 player and listen to your favorite song, or when you sit down and watch your favorite YouTube channel, or when you call your friends and loved ones on the holidays, all of that boils down to zeros and ones. All of those calculations and decisions boil down to just two different things, zeros and ones. And it's kind of reminiscent of the yin and yang, right, in Taoism, or even the trigrams, where you only have two different trigrams that make up all the different kinds of combinations in the I Ching that are used for divination and oracles. And some people even see a strong correspondence between the 64 bits of the computers and the 64 trigrams of the I Ching, or even the 32 paths of the Kabbalistic tree with the 32 bits, or 32 times 2, which equals 64. So you can see that there is some computation behind the philosophy of a lot of these esoteric uh, schools and paths. And it's seeing the correspondences and the interconnectedness of seemingly unrelated subjects such as philosophy and esotericism and computer technology. All right, so binary, zeros and ones. It's just an electrical current. One means it's on, which translates into true. Zero means off or no electricity, which translates into false. True or false, zeros and ones. Uh, this is the binary computation that we're talking about. And from there, you have logic gates that are now combinations of zeros and ones in larger groups that are used to make decisions. And logic gates, let me give you an example of an AND logic gate. So both premises have to be true for an AND gate. For example, are you going to the party? I'm going to the party if there's cake and there's wine. Both of those have to be true for me to go to that party. If there's only cake and no wine, or if they've got cake and beer, I'm not going. So that's an example of an AND gate. Both of those premises have to be true. An OR gate, only one has to be true. So, are you going to the party? Well, there either has to be cake or there has to either be wine. So if there's wine but no cake, I'm still going to go. Or if there's cake and no wine, I'll still go. Only one of those has to be true. So that's an OR gate. All right. And so you have different types of gates that have truth values to them and false values. And these different connections then can enable the computer to have increasingly more powerful computation abilities, you see. And you're talking about combinations and patterns, trillions and trillions and trillions and layers of this that enable the sophisticated and complex computations and decision making capabilities that you have in the full blown like chat GPT AIs and Gemini and all of that. Okay. Um, from there, you have microprocessors that are just massive networks of logic gates, different logic gates that are wired together to do these calculations, and it enables them to store memory and to run software such as operating systems, right? And within those operating systems, you've got mini softwares or apps that you can run. For example, I'm using a Windows-based laptop, so that is one software, and then there's software within that software, such as the Facebook app or a word processing app that runs within the Windows operating system. You also have AI that tells the hardware how to use those zeros and ones, which is kind of like your soul telling your body what to do, right? And from there, you have neural networks that are built on top of this through the use of mathematical models. And you have the idea of a function. Now, I'm not saying that this is based on mathematical functions, but a basic function is an input. Then there's something being processed. The input is being processed, whether something's being added or subtracted or changed. And then there's an output. That is the basic definition of a function. And you have mathematical functions that have inputs. There's something happening, and then there's an output for that. And you also have digital functions. Basically, that's the idea. There's an input, and then there's something happening to it, and then there's an output. Okay? Neural networks are built on top of this using mathematical models that simulate how human neurons work. So all of this is based off of our brains, off of what's out there in nature already. A neuron in AI takes up multiple inputs, zeros and ones, or floating point numbers. This is numbers with decimals. This enables a more precise, instead of just one, which may have been rounded off from 1.34689 whatever. So the float is the 1.3689 da 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 da. That is the more precise number, and sometimes that is something that's necessary. Then it takes the inputs and it weighs them in order of importance. And there's also biases that you can have within the neuron. And this again, it evolves further into the more complex decision making and processing calculations. But to keep it simple, from there, it adds all that up, and then it runs the sum through an activation function, which in C is called the sigmoid function. And I have given the example of the sigmoid function, and this is not something that is not in our class, that was not covered in the class, but is something that I went and learned on my own. I researched and informed myself on because I wanted to do this special project. I found it interesting to me, more meaningful to me as a practicing magician. And so that's where we are with that. The output, if it's close to 1, again, we're talking about a float, right? So if, let's say, the results of that process that function had was 1.458, okay, if it's closer to 1, it means yes, or a strong signal. If it's closer to 0, it means no, or a weak signal. So let's say if it was a 0.23, that's closer to 0. What if it was a 0.98999? That's closer to 1, right? So it has to make these decisions and decide and act accordingly depending on what those those processes are within it. And then it has that output, which then can be passed to another neuron, whether it's in the digital space or in your brain. That's how we think. This is how we process. This is how we have our intelligence. So this is how we practice our cognitive abilities. So here's the summary of the summary. Zeros and ones are grouped together to form logic gates, and they're grouped together to form circuits, and ultimately you have a CPU, and the CPU runs the software, and within the software you have the neural networks, which are grouped together to form intelligent AI. We stack these simple switches, the zeros and ones, we stack them together into thinking machines through the transistors that are, we've got gazillions and gazillions of tiny transistors on the microchips that are literally on the motherboard on your computer. And we use math and logic, similar to how a child uses Lego blocks, puts the Legos together. So imagine putting Legos together. This is basically, that's the same principle behind that. So the program that I've created here is an LBRP, which stands for Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. So this is a very common acronym for someone who practices the occult, who practices banishing rituals, high ritual magic. LBRP Ritual Assistant with Baby AI, or a baby artificial intelligence. It is building a digital familiar in C programming. All right. But the principles behind this can be used in anything that you want to use your focus and your will to create. So it doesn't have to be esoteric. It doesn't have to be anything spiritual. It can be anything that requires it, that you want to use your focus and will on. This is the basic principles are here. All right, so this particular one starts with a ritual check-in. It asks, how are you feeling right now? And what is your intention for this ritual? And for people who practice the rituals, we keep a ritual diary, and we record our emotions for every ritual. We record our emotions. What were you thinking, feeling at the time? All of these things are important. And they do have a factor in your results and in your final outcomes. It uses your answers as input, like how you're showing up spiritually and emotionally. And then it gives you an elemental message. And this message is based on your mood and your intent that you've inputted. And then it randomly picks one of 5 elements or tattvas. So you have the ether tattva, which is the big one that's pretty much the source of everything, right? Including the other ones. And then you have fire, water, air, earth. And these are the symbolic or the metaphorical elements that make up the whole universe, the whole cosmos, right? Then it gives you a personalized message for that element. This is called channeling the tattva. So it channels that tattva element and gives you a personalized message. And you can think of this similar to a tarot card pull, but it's on an elemental basis. Now, initially I wanted to do it with the tarot, but the tarot card deck has 78 different cards in it, and that was going to be a very, very extensive coding project for me. So I kept it simple with the elements. The baby AI reads your ritual energy. So this AI looks at how long your mood and intent answers were. Were they short? Were they kind of long and drawn out? Like, you can put in as much as you want. And the more you put in, the better, right? The more it has to work with. And it uses a simple brain-like formula to calculate your ritual energy level. So you have 3 different weights here, right? Is it low? Maybe you're distracted or not really connected. Is it balanced? You're focused and steady. That's the optimal one, right? High. Wow, now you're powerful. You have a powerful intent and readiness. And then it shows you the reading. And then you tell it if it was correct. The program will ask you, was that reading accurate? Tell me, was it low, okay, or high? And you type your answer based on your response, and then it will adjust its internal settings just a little bit better so it can do better the next time around and improve. So, for example, if it guessed high and you said no, it's actually low, it'll get more cautious next time. But if you guess high, and if it guesses high and you say yeah, that's right, it'll trust that more, and so this is how it learns. Okay, it records the ritual, so every ritual gets saved onto a file on your computer, and it will include your mood and your intent that you documented, the AI's reading of your energy, and what your feedback was. So this helps the AI to remember the past and to learn from your patterns. All right. Then it guides you through the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. And it just starts performing the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram there on the digital level. And once all is done, it'll walk you through each step of the LBRP, one part at a time, and then it pauses a bit after each step. It waits for you to press enter so you can go at your own pace. And you have those four basic parts of the LBRP. You have the cross, you have the drawing and the vibrating the God names, you have the invoking of the archangels, and then you have the closing. All right, so who is this for? This is perfect for anybody practicing high ritual magic, ceremonial magic. You also have a lot of people that practice, anybody that's practicing any kind of spiritual banishing rituals that's familiar with that. People who want a digital assistant that responds to them emotionally. Beginners who want to be walked through the LBRP step by step. Curious minds who want to see how an AI can mix with ritual, intention, and growth. All right, so that's the end of this particular video. I will explain a little bit more about the actual program in the PDF file, as well as in the commenting of the actual program. Okay, here is the actual code. We're going to go through the code briefly. Like I said in the other video, I'm going to do more explanations in the PDF file, as well as in the commenting section here. I'm going to comment that out a little bit more. But here at the top, these green ones here, these are the header files, and these are basically, they have .h for header at the end. As you can see, all of them have .h, and these take pre-written instructions that help me to use things like functions and help me, it gives me a way to not have to code all of that extra stuff. It's already coded, and I can kind of have a shortcut when I'm writing the code here. So we have right here, we have the wait for enter that kind of lets that scrolling of the LBRP take, I can take my time with it instead of it just letting it scroll within 0.5 seconds the whole thing through. Okay, so we have the wait for enter, which is a constant character message, and then printf screen and flushing that input. We have the sigmoid activation function that I talked about in the slides there. Okay, and then we also have the evaluation here where we see the AI is evaluating the ritual energy and learning from the feedback. And as you see down here, double, weight, this, and bias, this is what I talked about in the slides. So this is what it uses to order the importance of certain things and to also make that decision and to learn, right? Okay, here, learning from the past rituals, you have the fopen memory underscore file. Okay, so as you can see, computing the output here, okay, you have the energy evaluation here. You have the part where you get the feedback. How accurate was this? Okay. Feedback size of, parentheses, feedback. Adjust the bias based on feedback. You've got strings that you're using here. You're using the if command, else if. This was also covered in our class. Now save to memory here. You have the control, flow control here. You have the case, if, switch, decision, case. Okay, so you have this shortcut so you don't have to do if else. And this really keeps the code clean. Okay. And then it goes on to perform the LBRP, which is nothing but the print function, right? Yeah, we have wait for enter. Again, we didn't cover this in the class, but this is a piece that is very easy to learn. And, you know, there are things that you can do with C that's not covered in the class that I went ahead and learned and researched for this particular project. So that's pretty much it. It's not a whole lot of code. It's not oodles and pages of code. It's pretty clean and crisp. So let's go ahead and run this. I'm using Code Blocks compiler. All right, so how do you feel right now? Here, let's make this a little larger. How do you feel right now? I'm going to say I feel a bit tired since it is 1:40 a.m. However, I am also excited about this program that I've created and the class project that I am turning it in with. What is your intent for this ritual? Oh my gosh, it didn't even wait for me to ask. Okay. Let's try it again. Feeling good. What is your intent for this ritual? My intent is to banish, clear my mental and physical space of all negativity. All right, elemental guidance, Prithvi, earth, ground you're feeling good. My intent is to banish, clear my mental and physical space of all negativity, become real. Okay. Baby AI evaluation, energy level balance, 0.59. How accurate was this reading? I would say it is okay. Yes. Press enter to begin the LBRP. LBRP ritual guide. So here it has done the Kabbalistic cross, touch the forehead, Ata, touch the chest, Malkut, right shoulder, Vigebura, left shoulder, Vigedula, clasp the hands, Li Olam Amen. Then we're doing the drawing of the vanishing pentagrams in the east. We're vibrating Yud He Vav He. Then in the south, we're vibrating Adonai. In the west, we're vibrating Eheye. In the north, we're drawing the pentagram and vibrating Agala. Okay, we're pressing enter. Now we're invoking the archangels. Before me, Raphael for air. Behind me, Gabriel for water. To my right, Michael. To my left, Uriel for earth. And then about me flames the pentagram, and within me shines the six-rayed star. We repeat the Kabbalistic cross to close, and then the ritual is complete. You breathe in silence, the ritual is closed, you carry the light within you. Process returns 0, which in C, there's always something that has to be returned, right? And you usually do want it to be 0. Execution time, 109.065 seconds. Press any key to continue. And that's it. That's the program.